Chase at the 40. Look at that move. Look at Chase go. Oh, my goodness. What a gear.
He comes down to this in his car end zone. Intercepted.
McPherson. And Cincinnati is heading to the Super Bowl.
Boss here. Mixon's going to throw. Open man. Caught. Higgins touchdown.
Drives. Touchdown. Joe Burrow has his first rushing touchdown of the season.
Hooday, Bengal fans. He is Maan. I am Jake. This is the Bengals Pulse, the heartbeat of our Cincinnati Bengals. Maan, episode 10 is here. And man, do we have a big show today. How's your week going, man?
It's been going great. I'm glad to be away from work, and I'm ready for this episode. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, Maan, let's go ahead and get right into it. Maan, our guest today has quickly become another Bengals and Cincinnati legend. He started his career in Syracuse, New York, as the radio voice for the Syracuse Chiefs minor league baseball team before transitioning into television. He was hired in 1995 on Fox 19 in Cincinnati. In 2000, he became the Cincinnati Bearcats football and basketball play-by-play broadcaster, and just recently was inducted in 2019 to the University of Cincinnati James P. Kelly Athletics Hall of Fame. He has hosted our Reds TV pregame show on Fox Sports Ohio, and in 2011, Maan, he became the iconic play-by-play voice of our Cincinnati Bengals. He even has a character on The Simpsons named after him. Here he is, the 4-time winner of the Ohio Sportscaster of the Year, the voice of the Cincinnati Bearcats, and of course, the voice of our Cincinnati Bengals, Dan Hoard. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Maan and Jake, thank you for having me on. Thank you for that intro. You didn't have to go that long, but I appreciate it anyway. Thank you very much.
Oh, man, thanks for being on.
Dan, what an honor to have another member of the Syracuse Power Trio on Bengals Pulse. Hoard, Lapham, and Hobson. Who's the brains behind that operation?
I'm going to say Lapham.
He's the muscle for sure.
Dave Lapham got admitted to Harvard. He chose to go to Syracuse, but he was accepted to go to Harvard. He wanted a bigger football experience, so he chose Syracuse instead. But trust me, Hoard and Hobson would not have been admitted to Harvard.
He's also the muscle.
Yeah, he's also the muscle for sure. Dan, again, thank you for joining us on the Bengal Pulse. This is such an honor for Maan and I. Let's get right into it. Dan, you were a little busy this past year, right? You obviously with our Cincinnati Bengals making it to the Super Bowl, the Cincinnati Bearcats making it to the college football playoffs. Tell me, Dan, what was this year like for you? I mean, it had to be just an incredible experience from beginning to end.
Sometimes reality exceeds your dreams. And that was the case for me this past year. Obviously, when the University of Cincinnati went to the college football Final Four, that happened before the Super Bowl. And when it happened, I thought, this is the highlight of my broadcasting career. A month later, it seemed kind of secondary because there's nothing quite like a Super Bowl. So it was an unbelievable year for me personally. But honestly, I feel like it was an unbelievable year for all of us who love the Bengals or the Bearcats or both. You never really think that your team is going to, well, I take that back. You always hope and think that there's a chance that your team is going to get there to games like that. But certainly in the Bengals case, I think we thought with Joe Burrow somewhere down the road that this could happen. But I don't think very many people expected it to happen last year. And anytime your team goes to a game of that magnitude, the Super Bowl, it's a wonderful experience. But when it's unexpected, there's nothing better than that. That was truly a magical ride. Let's hope there are more like it. But that first time under Joe Burrow is going to be tough to top.
And, real quick, Dan, Maan and I both got to go to the Super Bowl. So we've both been Bengal fans for over 40 years. So it was an incredible experience for us. But we've talked about on our podcast, those 3 games leading up to the Super Bowl were absolutely incredible. I mean, they were. I don't want to use the word magical loosely, but it was just a magical time for Bengal fans. It was incredible, those 3 games.
Couldn't agree with you more. And I think it's fair to use the term magical because it certainly felt that way. The great thing was when they beat the Raiders, it seemed like we all had that cathartic experience as Bengals fans. The monkey is off their back. We don't have to hear about the 3-decade playoff drought anymore. And then anything after that was going to be gravy. And for them to go to Tennessee and knock off the number 1 seed, then to go to Kansas City, fall way behind and oust the 2-time defending AFC champ. Unbelievable. They almost completed the whole thing. They were 2 minutes away from winning the Super Bowl, but I do genuinely believe that they will be back under Joe Burrow and probably more than once.
I agree. Dan, I have 2 questions here. One of the top off-season phrases has been Frank Pollock's glass eater. Who do you think is going to be our glass eater at left guard this year? All the other slots seem to be pretty much, our 3 off-season additions and Jonah Williams. Who's going to be that guy at left guard? Also, Jesse Bates, the contract situation. I know we have until July 15th. How do you think that's going to play out? Do you think that a deal could be struck? A long-term deal?
Let's start with left guard. I think it's a 2-man battle personally between Jackson Carman and Cordell Volson. Jackson Carman will begin training camp, I think, with the 1. So it's kind of his job to lose. But when you use that phrase, it seems like this guy's way up here and the other guy's way down there. And that's not the case. They're probably going into training camp right like that. May the best man win. I'm eager to see what Jackson Carman is able to do. Last year, I think it was not considered enough by many of us. Certainly by a lot of the fan base, the fact that he was coming off herniated disc surgery at the end of his tenure in Clemson, that threw off his conditioning going into training camp, kind of put him behind the 8 ball. Obviously, Frank Pollock didn't love that, and it had an impact on Jackson's first year. But I'm still bullish on Jackson Carman. I think he's got a ton of potential, and I was really impressed by Cordell Volson and the little bit we got to see of him during OTAs and the minicamp. So it's going to be one of those 2 guys. If I had to flip a coin and make a guess, I would say Jackson Carman, but I certainly would not be surprised if it turns out to be Cordell Volson. As for Jesse Bates, my guess is that he will play this season on the franchise tag. I would be shocked if he left $13 million on the table. As far as I know, there have only been a couple of instances in NFL history where guys did not take the money coming to them on the franchise tag and sat out the season, most famously Le'Veon Bell. But keep in mind, in Le'Veon Bell's case, that was the 2nd consecutive year he had been tagged. So he played on it the first year, and then the second year he said, I wasn't going to do it again. So I think Jesse will wind up playing on the tag and probably sign elsewhere after this season. I love Jesse. I hope that's not the case. I hope they prove me wrong and can work out an extension between now and July 15th. But it seems like they've had a lot of time to work on this. For whatever reason, the 2 sides have not been able to come together. So my suspicion is he signs the tag, plays out this season for about $13 million and tries his luck somewhere else after this year.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that would be unfortunate. It's crazy too. I don't think it helps with all the money that's being thrown around right now either.
I know.
Especially at his position. There's so much money in hand right now being thrown out there, and it's like every week as Bengal fans, we're watching to see if another guy's going to get signed because it's almost, that saying of, the market is brand new tomorrow. And it really is, the market keeps getting higher and higher. And I'm with you. I hope it gets done, but
me too.
Oh man. All right, Dan, you do such an amazing job with your OTA observations, and Mon and I always love to hear what you have to say. Tell us, I know you kind of touched on Cordell Volson a little bit, but is there anybody else out there, rookies or vets, during those weeks in OTAs that really stood out to you? Maybe a diamond in the rough or a couple guys that you expect to have maybe a bigger season in 2022?
Well, this guy, I'm not necessarily expecting to have a big season in 2022, but if you want a real diamond in the rough, undrafted free agent Tyrekus Tisdale, who's a defensive lineman from Ole Miss. Wasn't drafted. He was injured for much of the last 2 years. I think he only played 10 or 11 games total over the last 2 seasons. But man, does he look the part. So they drafted 2 defensive linemen. And if you put the 3 of those guys together, the 2 draft picks and Tyrekus Tisdale, you would look at Tisdale and probably think, I bet that's the highest pick. I mean, the guy he's giant, he's fast. He looked good in the drills, but they're just drills. They're not really doing much football stuff at that point. So it's hard to make a real concrete, opinion based on that. But I'm eager to see what Tyrekus Tisdale can do in camp and in the preseason games, because he's a guy that I think has a lot of potential, at least to maybe, start the season on the practice squad and move into the 53 at some point if there are injuries or whatever. Just in terms of other OTA observations, I think the 3 defensive backs that they selected really look great. Great feet, great ability to flip their hips and change direction, a good size on all 3 guys. So, Dax Hill's a first-round pick. You expect him to be impressive. But Cam Taylor-Britt looked good. Tyson Anderson looked really impressive. So I think they've got 3 guys that are going to play a lot of NFL football in those 3 draft picks.
And they're fast too, right? I mean, every guy's a 4-3 guy, and they're versatile. And we've kind of seen that, the Bengals going in that direction with going out and getting guys that can play different positions. So, yeah, I'm excited to see those 3 defensive backs and what we're going to get out of those guys as well. How about a 4th receiver, Dan? Who do you think? Who do you think is going to be number 4?
Well, that's still a little bit of a TBA. Mike Thomas, when healthy, has been okay at the NFL level. Trent Taylor had the big 2-point conversion catch in the postseason against the Chiefs. He's a guy who early in his NFL career had some pretty productive stints in San Francisco. Now, he's strictly a slot, so you'd have to have Tyler Boyd off the field for him to make a big impact.
Right.
Those would probably be the first 2 guys that would come to mind for me. But, that is one spot that if you had to pick any position group where maybe they would still go out and grab a veteran, it might be the wide receiver spot. There's still some guys out there. I don't think Odell Beckham Jr. is a realistic possibility.
I was just about to ask you.
I don't think that's a realistic possibility for the kind of money he's likely to command, coming off a torn ACL, and to be somebody's 4th receiver when you've been one of the best in the game. That doesn't make much sense to me. But there's some other guys that are still out there, and who knows? Maybe the Bengals will investigate that depending on how injuries go during camp.
Yeah, maybe a Will Fuller. Dan, here's another roster question. Some of the best teams in football tend to have solid depth. The Bengals they were relatively free of major injury last year. I hope that trend continues. But injuries do happen. Can you talk about the depth? Are they going to be up to the challenge? God forbid a rash of injuries do occur.
Yes, unless that rash of injuries happens to a specific position group. That's always the killer, right?
Right.
If you lose a defensive lineman, an A offensive lineman, an A wide receiver, okay, you've got, a backup.
Right.
But when you lose the entire position group, and that's happened in the past, that's when you really run into trouble. So I think the roster going into the season is as deep as just about any in the NFL. But if they were to have a rash of injuries to a specific injury group, that would be hard to overcome. And that's true of every team in the NFL. That's just the nature of the beast. Like you said, they were mostly healthy last year. It's kind of hard to do that in back-to-back seasons, but assuming that they don't have that rash of injuries to one specific position group, I think their depth is good.
Yeah, wasn't it 2 years ago? It seems like they're picking defensive tackles off the street. They lost so many people. And, you're right. Hopefully it doesn't mushroom like that. I think it was 2020 that happened.
Correct.
Yep.
All right. So let's talk about this young group of talent we have, Dan, because they're special, obviously. I mean, Joe Burrow, to me, is the best quarterback playing in the NFL. And I know I sound like a homer, but I coach the position. I've played it my entire life. I see things from him that reminds me a lot of Joe Montana and the way he carries himself on the field. Obviously, Jamar Chase is Rookie of the Year. I mean, he is extremely special. T. Higgins, a guy that could probably start on the majority of the NFL teams as a number one receiver. And even Logan Wilson, a position that we Bengal fans have always kind of been that Achilles heel, right? Is the linebacker position. And us as Bengal fans, we finally have a guy like Logan Wilson, who I think is an elite linebacker in the NFL. We got all this talent, Dan. Do you think there's any possibility that we're going to be able to have those guys back on second contracts?
Absolutely. Now, keeping them all will be a challenge, but there's no way they're going to let Joe Burrow escape. So let's begin with that. The Bengals will extend Joe Burrow, and probably at the earliest opportunity next year. Keeping Chase and Higgins will be challenging, but that's one of the reasons why maybe they're not willing to meet Jesse Bates' price.
Yeah.
There's a salary cap. You can't keep everybody. So you've got to prioritize what positions are most important in the modern NFL to win games. And I think the Bengals have correctly prioritized wide receiver. They did so by drafting Chase instead of Penei Sewell. And we obviously see how that turned out. They've spent a ton of money in recent years on the defensive line because they feel that a successful defense begins with a run stopper in the middle and pass rushers on the edge. So that's why you go out and sign DJ Reader and Trey Hendrickson. So they won't sign everybody. You can't. No team can. But they have managed the salary cap as well as just about any team in the NFL. And I'm confident that they will be able to retain the guys that they consider to be most important to retain.
Gotcha. Quick follow-up to that question. Normally in August, the Bengals always sign maybe a couple players. Could you see maybe a Von Bell or a Jermaine Pratt or maybe even Jonah Williams getting signed in August to an extension?
Well, you're right about that. That has been the tradition. They usually try to extend somebody a year before they have to as training camp is winding down, and it makes sense. It makes sense in terms of avoiding them getting to free agency.
Right. And
secondly, you can apply some of that money to this year's salary cap in terms of the prorated bonus. So I would think that that's a possibility. Von Bell's really interesting to me because if they don't reach a deal with Jesse by July 15th, then the handwriting is on the wall that he's almost certainly going to leave at the end of the year. Well, you've got a first-round draft pick who's, we think, going to be ready to take over at one of the starting spots.
We hope, right?
Yeah, you hope. I mean, based on his pedigree, you think and you hope. So based on that, at that point, does it make sense to prioritize trying to get Von Bell to sign an extension? And I would say it probably does. He certainly doesn't seem to be on the back nine. There's plenty of tread left on that tire. He's playing great. He's in tip-top condition. He's a great team leader. So if they can't work out a deal with Jesse by July 15th, I think trying to extend Von becomes a very realistic possibility, and pairing him going forward with Dax Hill.
And I think too, we've seen kind of in the past where the Bengals have done that, right? They've in a position group, they might offer a guy and that guy either declines or decides to go somewhere else. And it's almost like they flip that contract and give it to the next guy in line. And I'm with you. I could see them doing that with Von Bell.
Yeah, hope it happens.
And I would be all for it. I think Von Bell's been a big key to this turnaround. His work ethic is second to none. He's not the most talkative guy. He leads by example, but he's a really good player and a tremendous leader. And I would love to see him stick around beyond this year.
Hey, Dan, the Bengals have had a long, successful history of players transitioning to the broadcast booth. Obviously, Chris Collinsworth, multiple Emmys, Boomer. You got Bob Trumpy, Solomon Wilcott, your partner, Dave Lapham. Who could you see on this current roster potentially doing the same? Maybe Von Bell.
Von has a super deep voice, so he would be a natural. That's a really good question. I haven't given that much thought. Obviously, Joe Burrow, 20 years down the road. He's so thoughtful, smart. When he chooses to speak, what he says is usually impactful. So I could, and plus he'll have the star power. I mean, there are very few players in the NFL right now that have more sizzle and pizzazz and star power than Joe Burrow. So he would be a natural. But for somebody who would be coming up in the more immediate future as a potential broadcaster, I would have said CJ Uzama a year ago. He'll be a natural. Boy, I wish I had a good answer for you. I'll give you one. Ted Karras. We don't know Ted all that well yet, but from my limited exposure to Ted, very smart, great sense of humor, glib. Ted Karras will be a natural if he wants to do that after his playing days.
So you're saying possibly the next Dave Lapham?
Possibly the next Dave Lapham, but hopefully not anytime soon. I tell Lap, I hope he's got at least 10 more good years left in him, because I certainly want him to be part of this entire Joe Burrow run and beyond.
Yes, yes. Well, I will tell you, Bengal fans, we will not let either one of you guys leave. That's for sure.
Right, you're stuck with me. I'm going to be around, I hope, for a long time. But
I'm
Dave
glad.
Lapham, in all seriousness, Dave Lapham is going to be a very difficult person to replace when he decides that his broadcast career is finished. And I hope this is not for many, many years to come, because he's awesome and I love working with him. But he does so much beyond just broadcasting the game. He's a tremendous ambassador for this franchise.
Yes.
Aside from Mike Brown and his family, nobody has been associated with the Cincinnati Bengals longer than Lap. It's coming up on 50 years, a few years from now. And I just hope people, and I think they do, I hope they appreciate all he's meant to this franchise over the years. I know some people have said he's like the Joe Nuxhall of the Bengals, and I think that's a really good comparison. Great player, great broadcaster, tremendous person. And I think we're really lucky that he has represented this franchise for so long.
And you know what, too, Dan? He is. We as fans, we love to see ex-players bleed our colors, right? And Dave, that's Dave. I mean, he bleeds the orange and black, and as fans, we're drawn to that, and it's genuine too. I think that's the important thing, is it's genuine, the way he feels about the Bengals. I tell people, if I were in his shoes, that's probably how I would sound. I would probably sound like that, cheering and going crazy.
The pain in his voice when a bad play occurs, just that tone. Like I'm like, I feel it. I'm feeling it too.
Yeah, you can't fake that. That passion is genuine. It's obvious. There are probably people out there that love the Bengals as much as Dave Lapham, but nobody loves the franchise more. And that's one of the reasons why it's such a joy to be to his left every Sunday, or in this case, some Mondays and Sunday nights and Thursdays. He really does. I'd love this job under any circumstances, but Lap makes it even better.
Well, Maan and I were very excited to see he was one of the 15 eligible for the Ring of Honor, because he is definitely deserving of that. All right, Dan, you have made some of the most iconic calls in Bengals history. For me, I have always been a fan of the AJ Green calls. One of my favorite calls was in 2018, the Dalton to Green with 6 seconds left to beat the Falcons. Tell me, two-part question. One, what is your favorite, most iconic Bengal call that you have made? And two, can you give us one of those iconic AJ Green touchdown calls?
Absolutely. Let me start with the first question. So when you ask me about my favorite calls, for me, it's really, I'm more like a fan than thinking even of my broadcasting. It's the moment. It's not how I called it. In many cases, I don't even remember how I called it. It's the excitement of the moment. So the first thing that comes to mind for me, quite honestly, is Jermaine Pratt's interception against the Raiders this year. Because as I said earlier, that moment was so cathartic for all of us that had endured tough playoff losses, that had hard time sleeping the night after the loss to the Steelers in 2015 in that playoff game.
Maan and I were there.
We were there.
I drove up. We drove up, Dan, overnight to go to that game.
Yeah, that's, we don't have to worry about that anymore, right?
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
As much as the fumble hurt and the penalties hurt over the years, we can forget about that now.
We can forget about
since the Jermaine Pratt interception to beat the Raiders and the games that followed that. So, again, it's not a personal call, but that Jermaine Pratt interception, I think, is my favorite individual moment since I've been broadcasting Bengals games. In terms of a call, it's not a famous play, but you may remember that when Giovanni Bernard was a rookie, the Bengals were on Hard Knocks, and we learned during the course of Hard Knocks that he was driving a minivan. So here's the second
Yes.
round NFL draft pick.
Yes.
You expect him to have a really fancy car, to have spent the bonus on a fancy car, and I think he was driving his girlfriend's mom's minivan or something like that at the
I was going
time.
to say, I thought it was his girlfriend's mom's or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So at some point his rookie year, I think he scored a touchdown against the Steelers in a night game, and he just burst through the pack and went flying into the end zone. And I said something to the effect of, he drives a minivan, but he runs like a Maserati or something like that.
I remember that.
It was either that or the other way around. I thought that was kind of a clever line. So I guess
that was great.
From a personal standpoint, I kind of like that call. And as for AJ Green, I'll give you the story behind it if you've never heard it.
Yes, absolutely.
And then I will give you an AJ Green call. So the first year that I was hired to be the Bengals radio voice, I was still doing minor league baseball at that point for the Pawtucket Red Sox. The Bengals hired me in May. I didn't want to abandon my baseball team in the middle of the season, so I explained to my boss that I had accepted this job, but I would try to finish out the season because the minor league baseball season ends basically at the start of the NFL season. It ends in early September. So I'm doing minor league baseball, meaning I couldn't go to training camp, but the Bengals did have preseason games. So I left Pawtucket, travel to Cincinnati or to wherever they were having these preseason games. I would do the game, and then I would go back to Pawtucket and then continue doing baseball. So for my first preseason that year, we went to Cincinnati first and then traveled with the team to Detroit. And I hadn't seen AJ Green practice. I hadn't met him yet. I'd only read about him and talked about him with others. So I kind of see him standing around. And I figured, well, there's a good opportunity to introduce myself and make some small talk. So I went up to him. I explained who I was. And then just as a way to make small talk, I said, what does AJ stand for? Because I hadn't looked it up. And he said, Adriel Jeremiah. And I thought to myself, man, that name almost has a biblical quality to it, doesn't it? It just sounds regal.
It does. It sounds regal.
Like royalty or something. So I kind of had that in the back of my mind. And then, at some point that season when he scored one of his first touchdowns, I said, Adriel Jeremiah Green, and people seemed to like it. So then I continued to do that after he scored touchdowns or made big plays. So you requested one? What quarterback would you like to throw to AJ Green? Dalton, since that was common at the time, or do we want the Dream Burrow to AJ Green combo?
Let's go the Dream. Let's go with the Dream.
All right.
Let's go with the Dream.
18 seconds to go. 4th and goal from the 9 here in Pittsburgh. The Bengals down by 6. The game comes down to this play. Burrow waiting in the shotgun, 5 yards behind his center, Ted Karras. The snap. Burrow drops back 3 steps, looking back left corner of the end zone. He fires. It is caught for the touchdown by Adriel Jeremiah Green.
All right.
Oh, man.
I'm glad you picked Pittsburgh.
I'll be honest.
I'm glad you picked Pittsburgh.
That got me a little emotional. Yeah, I'll be honest.
I got goosebumps.
I love it.
That was awesome.
That's awesome.
That was awesome.
All right. Dan, listen, thank you so much. In closing, I got this question. Could you please share a Mike Brown story? Is there any way you could get Mike Brown on as a monthly segment on your podcast? You have him on once a year. It is absolutely must listen. His storytelling is something else. I love that episode when he's on.
Yeah.
Can you share a Mike Brown story? He seems like such an amazing person.
Mike is great. He's been so good to me and my family. I'm so happy the Bengals experienced the success they did last year because I'm happy for all Bengals fans, but I'm probably happiest for Mike. I would love for him to experience the joy of a Super Bowl championship instead of getting to 3 of them and coming up just a little bit short. But hey, with Joe Burrow, there's a good chance it's going to happen sometime soon. So I've got my fingers crossed. I'll give you a Mike Brown story. I told this on my podcast, but for those who haven't heard it, I'll tell it again. Last year when the Bengals announced they were going to do a Ring of Honor, and they came out with a list of nominees for people to vote on, there were 18 names, I think, on the list initially, 17 or 18 names. So I went to Mike's office, and he agreed to basically sit down and tell stories about these 17 or 18. I guess it's 17 guys. So I bring up the names. He vamps, talks about them. I mean, it's just one great story after the other. The entire thing took about an hour. So when it was finished, I thanked Mike, shook his hand, told him how grateful I was. He was willing to do that for me. And before I turned off my recorder, I dropped it. And the recording was destroyed.
No.
Oh, wow.
So I have taken an hour of Mike's
no.
time. He's given me tremendous stories, and I have nothing to show for it at the end of this interview.
Oh, no.
The next day, he did the whole thing again.
Wow.
That's Mike Brown. I mean, I was so embarrassed to ask him to do it again. I felt terrible. He probably should have canned me, but he's such a good dude that he was willing to do the whole thing over again. The podcast was fantastic. And I'm glad you said that, Maan, because Mike actually does two a year with me. We always do one at they call it the turtle soup luncheon that the Bengals have just before the start of training camp every year. That one, I usually, we've done things like, all right, I'm going to go through a list of the best wide receivers in franchise history, and he'll talk about them, or the best quarterbacks or best defensive players. We usually do one kind of along those lines. And then toward the tail end of the season, we'll do another interview that could be about anything. I usually just try to ask him questions that I don't think I've heard him answer in the past. And he's always great. So we'll be sitting down to chat probably sometime in the next month or so, just before the start of camp. And then we'll do it again toward the end of the regular season.
Yeah, he's absolutely amazing. I wish that it would be great to have a monthly segment with him, but that's probably too much to ask. And also Adam Shine, that's a great interview too. When he's on your show, that's special. That's good stuff.
I love Adam Shine, another Syracuse guy. I've been trying to get him back on this summer. He's so busy. He's got a daily radio show. He's got a daily TV show. He writes for the NFL and has other irons in the fire as well. So I've been sending him emails and texts every few weeks. You just reminded me to try again.
That's right.
So I'll shoot him another one and see if we can get him on soon.
Dan, thank you so much. You're the best. We really appreciate you.
Jake, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, man. Like I said, it's been an honor to have you, and you guys, you and Lap, what you guys do for the Bengals and the community, and just all of us, the whole Bengal family, the fans, and everybody. It's second to none. You guys are absolutely the best, and I don't say that lightly. Thank you so much for coming on our show. Again, it was an honor, man. Thank you very much.
Power Trio, the Power Trio.
Yeah, we got to get Lap on. We got to get
We'll work on that. We'll work on
that. We got to close the trio.
Point. I'm sure he will do it at some point. Thanks again for having me on. Hooday.
Hooday. Thank you, Dan.
That was great. Absolutely amazing. What a great guy. I tell you, that was – you can't ask for anything better than that.
I'll be honest with you. When he did that call, I got emotional.
Yeah, that was great. That was absolutely great. He's just a wonderful guy, and man, I hope you guys loved it because I did.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really at this point. I really don't know what to say. He was just such a wealth of knowledge, and again, to me, he's one of the best. You know, Maan and you and I watch all the games on TV, or we go to them live. But anytime there's a big play that happens in the game, we always try. We go right away, because we want to listen to Dan and Lap.
Download it.
Yeah, download it so we can hear the call from those two guys. Man, just the best. Those two are the best.
They absolutely are. They really are.
So, Maan, real quick, close the show out. I got a trivia question for you. There's only one Bengals player to have his number retired in team history. Only one Bengal player in the team's history to have his number retired. Who is that player, and what number did he wear? And I'll give you a hint. I'm asking this because your birthday is right around the corner.
You're being a wise guy. It's Bob Johnson. His number's 54. Okay.
54 years, man.
I don't feel 54.
So when they signed Bob Johnson, what were you, like 32, something like that?
Real cute. One.
All right. Well, hey, man, what an incredible show. Guys, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this podcast. Check us out on Apple, Stitcher, and Spotify, all the podcast platforms. If you enjoy listening to this podcast and you have a little bit of time, please go on there and give us a 5-star review. We would appreciate it. And follow us on Twitter at Bengals_Pulse9 or on Instagram, the exact same without the at Bengals_Pulse9. You guys can hear I'm a little congested. I've been under the weather, but there was no way that I was missing this episode. So I did the T and Logan thing, and I fought through the injury because there's no way I was missing Dan Hoard. Mom, what a great show.
It was a great time. And you know what? I'm still trying to process it. And all right, let's do that. All right, let's sign off.
Let's sign off. All right, Bengal fans. He is Maan. I am Jake. This is the Bengals Pulse, the heartbeat of our Cincinnati Bengals. Guys, have a great week, and we will see you next week right here on the Bengals Pulse.
See you guys.